Meeting will please come to order. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Wilmette. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. As I said, this is a regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Wilmette. We will call the matters in the order which they appear on the printed agenda, and there are copies of the agenda on the table by the door. You may want to have one so you can follow along to see when your matter will be called. If you plan to address us tonight, we ask you please come up to the podium, please speak into the microphone and tell us who you are and where you live, as that may be relevant to the matter at hand. We ask that you speak clearly into the microphone so we can hear you, and because everything you say and everything we say is being recorded. And from those recordings, minutes of the meeting are prepared. These minutes are available at Village Hall and also on our website at wilmette.com. Also, our Village Board meetings are televised on Local Access Channel 6 and on the Internet. If you look up, you can see the cameras in the corners of the room. By televising our meetings, we make it easy for our neighbors in the community to follow the proceedings of the Village Board, see the types of matters that come before us, the questions that we ask, and the policies we create. You can find archived videos of Village Board and other local government meetings on our website. And I would like to personally thank all the residents of Wilmette who regularly tune into Channel 6 to follow the workings of their local government. Now, before each meeting, the board receives a packet of agenda materials, and these materials are also posted on wilmette.com on the Friday before our meeting, so that residents and other interested parties can review the very same materials that the trustees receive. This week's packet contained 575 pages. We've had an opportunity to review the information in the agenda packet, so if you do plan to address us tonight, we ask you to tell us the most relevant, the most material, the most important points you really want us to focus on. Finally, we are a community of neighbors, and as such, we want our meetings to be as civil and courteous as possible. So as a courtesy to those around you, please take this time to turn off your cell phones and your other devices. And while we're turning off our phones, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Trustee Sullivan.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Trustee Dodd.
Here.
Trustee Kurzman.
Here.
Trustee Barrow.
Here.
Trustee Plunkett.
Here.
President Polinsky.
Here on the agenda. Members of the audience may address the board on matters which are on tonight's agenda when that particular matter is called. So I'll ask now if there's any member of the audience who would like to address the board on an item which is not on the agenda. May I see a show of hands? Okay, moving on. Item 3 is the consent agenda. As described on the printed agenda, items which are routine business that are not normally debated by the village board are placed on the consent agenda. And all items with the number 3 are on the, begin with the number 3, I'm sorry, are on the consent agenda. So tonight that means the consent agenda starts on page 1 with item 3.1. It includes all of the items on page 2 and all but the last item on page 3 ending with item 3.22. Items on the consent agenda are up for approval tonight. If an item is not removed by a member of the audience and is not removed by one of the trustees, the item will be approved and it will not be discussed. So I'll begin by asking, is there any member of the audience who would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on to ask if any of the trustees have any items that they'd like to remove from the consent agenda. Okay, hearing none, may I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Ask the clerk now to please call the roll on the motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Trustee Sullivan.
Aye.
Trustee Kennedy.
Aye.
Trustee Dodd.
Aye.
Trustee Kurzman.
Aye.
Trustee Barrow.
Aye.
Trustee Plunkett.
Aye.
President Polinsky.
Aye, so the motion carries. The consent agenda has been adopted. If you were here for an item on the consent agenda, it was just approved. And I'll clarify for the people who are here tonight, again, all the items beginning with the number 3 have been approved, and that includes land use item 3.4 and item 3.5. So if you're here for one of those items, it was just approved. There'll be no further discussion of those items or any of the other items on the consent agenda. So you are free to leave. Of course, you're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. Now, if anybody is leaving, 2 things. First off, it is early. There's plenty of time to stop by one of our downtown restaurants. And to incent you, on the table, there are $5 off coupons that are accepted by certain of our downtown restaurants. So if anybody is leaving, please stop by one of our restaurants, and you can also use a coupon. We'll move on to item 4, which is report of officers. And item 4.1 is a request for an executive session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body pursuant to Section 2 sub C sub 1 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act. We will move on to a report from our village manager, Mr. Frenzer.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. President. Two quick updates. First, it is the holiday season as we're all decorating our homes and our trees. Inevitably, we have light strands that we need to get rid of because they don't work anymore, and we know they can't go into recycling, and we'd really not like to have them go into the landfill. And for yet another year, in cooperation with the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County, residents can bring their light strings that they'd like to have disposed of and extension cords to the Public Works facility on Laramie Avenue, south of Lake. There is a 24-hour-a-day drop-off in front of the Public Works office. Please, if the lights were on a garland or some other vegetation, please bring in just the lights. But it's a great way to keep them out of the landfill and to keep them out of the recycling bin where they can't go. Finally, this week the village is going to be winding up its leaf collection efforts for 2019. We appreciate the patience of residents and their willingness to keep working with us as we've extended the program an extra week due to the fact that the heavy snowfall that occurred during the leaf collection program put us a little bit behind schedule. We have on our webpage at www.wilmette.com a complete update for every zone in the village. It's the top item on the front page of the webpage. If you click on it, it'll take you to a landing page that shows the map where you would live and the exact status of your particular area. We are going to be hitting every area this week. We are going to be finishing every area this week. There's also, if you're so inclined, a place there where you can click to sign up for specific leaf collection updates if you'd like them emailed to you as well. This is going to be the final week of the program necessarily because the composting facility closes in December. They're staying open for us to finish, and after that, that's it. So please, if you haven't brought out leaves to the curb yet, don't bring them out now because they won't do any harm on the lawn for the winter, but they will be problematic if they're left in the curb. We will be following up in the coming weeks to make sure that the curbs are cleaned up so that there's not a problem with winter precipitation or rain in the future. And again, we appreciate everyone's cooperation and patience as we complete the process this week. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Trustee Dodd?
Could I ask Mr. Frenzer a question?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Thank you very much, first of all, for that update, because I do think residents are asking questions. I just have a question on, because it's been delayed a little bit, so not everybody maybe has paid as good of attention as they needed to in terms of parking on their street, and so their leaves might not have gotten picked up because their cars were there, and so is there anything a resident can do if they'd want somebody to come back and pick up their leaves?
If they could let the Public Works Department know where there's uncollected leaves, they will do their best to get to them. We may not be able to get all of them this week. Which ones we can't get are just going to have to go into the normal waste stream, but we'll get it cleaned up either with a street cleaner or with a factor. They are trying to address each area, each zone of the village between now and the end of the
Okay,
week.
great, thanks.
Okay, next report is from our Corporation Counsel, Mr. Stein.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Next item is item 5, which is the report of the Liquor Control Commissioner. There's no report tonight. We'll move on to our standing committee reports, which is item 6. First up is item 6.1, the Land Use Committee, and Trustee Barrow.
All items are on the consent agenda.
Next up is the Finance Committee, Trustee Kennedy.
The first item on the Finance Committee's agenda is the public hearing on Village of Wilmette's 2019 tax levy. Would you like to open the
Yep.
public hearing?
Thank you, Trustee Kennedy. I will now declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone present who would like to be heard on the matter of the 2019 tax levy? May I see a show of hands? Okay, seeing none, I now declare the public hearing closed.
Second item on the agenda is the adoption of ordinance 2019-0-75, or that's O, isn't it? Sorry.
Yes.
Regarding the 2019 tax levy.
Okay, can I get a motion?
So moved.
That was from the chair.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
That's okay. I move that we adopt ordinance 2019-0-75.
Okay, is there a second? You can do that.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. So in our budget process, this is the last administrative action that the board takes during the process. It is also the last meeting of the year, which is good that we get this done before the end of the year. We've obviously talked about the budget in multiple meetings, but is there any further discussion at this point in time? Okay, hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll on the motion?
Trustee Sullivan.
Aye.
Trustee Kennedy.
Aye.
Trustee Dodd.
Aye.
Trustee Kurzman.
Aye.
Trustee Barrow.
Aye.
Trustee Plunkett.
Aye.
President Polinsky.
Aye. Okay, so the motion carries. The ordinance has been adopted.
The third item on the agenda, just by the way, I thank you, Trustee Sullivan. I need help a lot, and I appreciate any help I get. The next item is removal from the table of ordinance 2019-0-70 and adoption of said ordinance.
Okay, so we'll start with the remove from the table. A motion from you.
I move it that we remove it from the table.
Okay, is there a second? Second. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so any opposed? Okay, it's been removed from the table. And now a motion for the adoption, please.
I move that we adopt ordinance 2019-0-70, establishing a stormwater utility and related fees.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Now, Mr. Stein, my thought was to have Trustee Kennedy make a motion on 624 as well, so that we can discuss, they're sort of related. Can we discuss them both together and perhaps vote on them together as well?
You can do an omnibus motion, the same as a consent agenda, but it would be, if you're voting yes, you'd be voting yes both, or no. for
Okay,
both.
so would it be appropriate for her to make a motion then on 624 as well? Because she made the motion on 623.
Yes, we can do a motion as well as for the adoption of the resolution,
Okay.
and then the discussion will entail both of
Both,
those,
right,
both
that
of
was
those,
the
and a
idea.
vote would be for both.
Right, okay, so Trustee Kennedy, would you make a motion on 6.24 as well at this
Prefer to
point?
do them as an omnibus?
I think we should vote on them together. If there's if people disagree, we can separate them as well. So,
Then I also move the adoption of Resolution 2019-R-18, directing village staff to delay collection of stormwater utility fees for non-single-family residential properties.
okay, is there a second? Second. All right, so now they've both been moved and seconded, and I believe, am I turning this over to Ms. Berger, or am I turning it over to Mr. Brayman?
Bridget.
Okay.
Good evening. So the first ordinance is establishing a new stormwater utility fee to generate revenue to pay for the large stormwater project the village is embarking on. And the second action is the resolution deferring the the non-single family residential fee until April of 2020. And the reason for that delay is the Municipal Services Committee has had 2 meetings to discuss a credit and incentive program. Specifically, the committee is looking at expanding credits for non-single family residential properties. And we had a productive meeting today. There were no decisions made. We expect that discussion to continue in January and perhaps February. At some point, however, we will have a complete credit and incentive manual to present to the village board for full adoption.
And does it make, I mean, obviously Municipal Services is driving the initial part here, but might it make sense for there to be a committee of the whole meeting, perhaps sort of before it comes to us, maybe we should all discuss it? I mean, is that within the realm of possibility?
Yeah, I think so. And I think depending on how the municipal services process goes and what comes out of it, it will dictate how we bring it to the village board. But it's going to require discussion from all 7 board members because there will be potentially significant credits and changes to how we had envisioned the ordinance as adopted tonight.
Okay, so we'll sort of play it by ear to see how it makes best sense to approach it. But at the end of the day, it's got to come to all of us.
Yes, it does.
To figure it out. Okay. And then for the residential properties, though, the ordinance implements the fee as we've sort of discussed and guided staff. It's consistent with those prior conversations, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, but maybe, though, to clarify, this resolution that we're talking about delays collection, but not implementation.
That's right, and that was the point of having it that way, so that
That's right.
you could look back to January 1st with whatever you decided with the credit manual and retroactively apply it.
Right, so that all of the non-single-family residential properties will still pay a full year's fee, but they will delay collection of the first quarter's fee.
Right, because the fee isn't known what it would be
Right.
actually in the
Exactly.
first quarter until you figure out the credits. Trustee Dodd.
And then I was thinking that the Municipal Services Committee was also looking at credits for the residential, for,
Yes.
and so have those been defined yet? Or, if not, do we need a motion?
I think
The credits that we're talking about specifically are for non-single-family residential, but homeowners or single-family residential properties are eligible for a detention credit. They're also eligible for a 100% credit if they can demonstrate that there is no impact to the stormwater system at all. So there were no changes, at least that came out of committee today, based on what was in the original manual. So homeowners are eligible for credit. We talked about a detention credit that would be retroactive to properties, non-single-family residential properties who have invested in large stormwater detention projects. Most of them, if not all of them, are mandated by MWRD as a part of a redevelopment or major expansion. But I think there's a strong preference that those should be recognized in the form of a credit. So we need to look into that a little bit further, but that's one area that we're looking at a credit. The second one would be an institutional and 501c3 credit for non-single-family residential properties, and the percentage of the credit is still to be determined, but there was enough interest at the committee meeting today that staff is going to take that back and look at the impact to the rest of the ratepayers, depending on what that fee reduction would be.
I think,
I know they're available in the draft, but I think anyone
Sure.
here or watching would benefit from hearing it.
So I'm going to actually cite this right from the draft manual. But property owners in the village are eligible to apply for a credit of up to 50% of the respected fee if they exceed the total stormwater detention volume according to the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. So this basically says if, as a homeowner, you won't get a credit if you put in a rain garden or a bioswale or you fix a backyard drainage problem. It has to be a substantial improvement to your property, actually putting in a detention basin and storing a significant volume of water. Mm-hmm. So that is the credit that we have available to single-family residential properties. We also have an incentive program that I expect to be widely used by homeowners who want to put in best management practices to encourage stormwater infiltration on their property, and that's very similar to the Rain Ready program that we had this year. Consists of a 50% up to $1,300 per property one-time reimbursement for their improvement. And a new addition is if they can show that they're removing large volumes of stormwater directly from the sewer system, that incentive goes to 50% up to $5,000 per property. So that would be like a disconnection of a sump pump or disconnection of downspouts or a yard drain. So those have a tremendous positive impact on the system.
I suspect staff is going to be communicating extensively with residents, both in terms of when the new fee comes online and the credits available and the like. The next communicator, I suspect, will be a big section on that. Is that right?
And we're in print now on our large one-piece mailer that should be hitting mailboxes soon if it hasn't already. We've just approved a postcard as a reminder, as well as working with Metro Strategies on our general social media. We're doing a Facebook Live Q&A at the end of this month as well. So we will be reaching out in a lot of different avenues and venues to make sure that everyone's aware.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing that sort of came out of our communication survey that we did, that different people like different ways. Some of them like the email, some of them like the communicator. Some of them don't read anything that's on paper anymore, so they need the social media information as well. So good. Trustee Plunkett.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify, the first incentive program that you talked about that you said was similar to Rain Ready. Is that the Rain Ready, or is there something in addition to Rain Ready?
Rain Ready is a trademark program of the Center of Neighborhood Technology, the agency that actually administered the program for us, and we're no longer using them. We're just going to administer it in-house with our staff through our regular permit program. So we can't call it Rain Ready, we're just calling it Residential Incentive Program.
Okay, but that's capped at a certain amount per year, correct?
The budget, there is a set budget, so it'll be first come, first serve, and we can keep a waiting list for properties that don't make the cut.
And the benefit of not using the Rain Ready consultant is that half of the budget was going to pay consulting fees. So we're able to increase the incentives we're providing, or increase the number of incentives we can provide by doing it in-house.
Okay.
President Blinsky, starting this, you mentioned a committee of the whole, because we had talked about at Municipal Services of scheduling a January meeting. Staff was going to do some analysis.
I guess I leave it to Municipal Services and the staff to determine whether it makes sense. It probably makes sense for Municipal Services to get together one more time, and then maybe a committee of the whole, but I sort of leave it to you guys to figure that out. I think before something's presented to the board, we should have a committee of the whole to talk through it, and then something can be presented to the board, is my thought.
Yeah, so my question, knowing that then, Municipal Services, we can talk whenever our meeting in January, and then we don't have to bring necessarily a recommendation, we can bring a report of here's what we reviewed.
Here are the elements, here's what staff has put in front of us. I think that makes sense, just given it's complicated. There's a lot here, and at the end of the day, the whole board approves it, so I think probably the whole board should talk about it as well. Municipal Service will do the yeoman's work here, getting it like sort of refined and the like, but I think we all should sort of weigh in on it.
And is that just focused on non-residential properties or the stormwater fee?
I think it's the whole credit manual is what we're talking about.
Got it, okay.
So, yeah. Okay. All right, any further questions for Bridget or for any other member of the staff? Okay, I'll open the floor if there's any public comment. Would anybody like to address the board on this matter? Okay, hearing none. Is there any further discussion? Again, we've been through this multiple times, but I want to allow for any other discussion that people would like to add at this point. Okay, it's my suggestion that we vote on these together because they sort of are together. Is that okay with folks?
Take two votes.
We still.
I would say, well,
I'm confused.
we can do it, we can do a combined vote, it's fine.
That would be my preference, but.
Did Bridget have a
That's for the next item.
For the next one? Got it?
Yeah, we have another one.
Sorry, we're just a little
We're a little confused.
confused.
I am, anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, and is there any discussion on either 623 or 624? Either the resolution delaying the collection or the ordinance establishing the fee? Okay, so my preference would be to vote them together.
So then your vote will, just so the record's clear, the vote will be recorded as, it'll be one vote, but it'll apply to both the ordinance and the resolution.
I do have a question.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I think this is for staff. So is there any administrative cost for us to, in terms of, since we're going to be implementing this, is there any administrative cost to us that we should be aware of as a board that by delaying the implementation of the non-residential and then having to have to set it up to do it twice for one quarter and then back down to once? You know what I mean? Just asking if there's...
No, there's no actual cost. It might be some additional staff time as we set it up in the system, but nothing we can't handle.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, would the clerk please call the roll on the motion to adopt ordinance 2019-0-70, establishing a stormwater utility and related fees, and the motion to adopt resolution 2019-R-18, directing village staff to delay collection of stormwater utility fees for non-single-family residential properties.
Trustee Sullivan.
Aye.
Trustee Kennedy.
Aye.
Trustee Dodd.
Aye.
Trustee Kurzman.
Aye.
Trustee Barrow.
Aye.
Trustee Plunkett.
Aye.
President Polinsky.
Aye, so the motion carries. The ordinance and the resolution have been adopted. I think that's it for
I
Trustee
believe
Kennedy and
that's-
Finance.
That's correct.
So Administration Committee, Trustee Dodd.
All items on consent?
Municipal Services Committee, Trustee Sullivan.
We have one item, it's item 6.41, and I make a motion to approve the contract in the amount not to exceed $5,350,000 with Stormtrap LLC in Romeoville, Illinois for a pre-purchase of precast concrete units for Phase 1 of the Neighborhood Storage Project at Community Playfield.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and now I will once again turn it over to Ms. Berger for the presentation, I believe.
Thank you. Yes, this is a big purchase tonight, so we wanted to take an opportunity to just go through a few slides and explain where we're at with the project. So, as far as plan development, for Community Playfield, we're about 90% complete, and we're going through what's called a QA/QC constructability review, and there's several layers to that. Baxter and Woodman, who's the original designer, will do an in-house review of those plans. Christopher Burke Engineering, who's the prime consultant, will also take an independent look at them. And we're hiring a third firm who's very fresh to the project. And it's not that we don't have confidence in the plans, we do. We're hiring these professionals to find things that we're not anticipating. My motto is always no surprises. And so we want to make sure we have allowances, and any unusual condition that we could experience, we want to make sure that we're anticipating that now so we can prepare for it and build it into the construction documents. We'll also be sending the full set of plans and specifications to the Park District and School District, so they'll be reviewing them in the next few weeks, and we can incorporate all those comments into our final set of bid documents. And we hope to be out to bid the first week in January.
And this is actually bidding the construction. This isn't the contract we're talking about going out to bid.
Correct.
This is actually bidding the whole construction project.
The company who's going to actually put it in the ground.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's a big contract then.
It's a big contract, yes. At the last village board meeting, the village board approved a motion to waive the competitive bid process and allowed staff to negotiate a contract directly with Stormtrap. Our consultant, well, and tonight we're asking for approval of that contract in the amount of $5.35 million. Our team of consultants did their due diligence when looking at the design for community playfield and what type of vault construction would meet the village's needs and ensure a successful project. And here are just a few of the bullet points. Stormtrap is very unique because they're able to build the required volume in the smallest footprint, and that was obviously very important to the Park District as far as their programming and allowing us to use their fields. The longevity of the product is outstanding. Contractor familiarity and the ability to, the efficiency to build the project is actually something that we're going to appreciate when we bid the project, and hopefully we'll get several contractors who are interested in actually working for us. So we're expecting to have a nice bid pool based on the fact that there's contractors who know how to install this product. When I say widely used on similar projects, the consultants have actually told me they can't find another application of an underground storage vault with any company other than Stormtrap. So we know that this has been widely used, successfully used, and we have confidence that we're going to get the same benefits in Wilmette. And then lastly, the price that they gave us is very competitive. It's about 20% less than an average of 11 other Stormtrap projects. We think the competitive nature of their pricing is probably because it's a very large project, so we benefit from the economies of scale, as well as they know this is a multi-year endeavor. So I think they want to keep working with us.
And one of the alternatives would have been to allow the contractor to include that in its bid, but what would likely happen there is then you're paying a markup on the fixed cost of
Yes.
so we believe we're saving money by doing it this way, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the other benefit of the pre-purchase is we can guarantee that they're going to start manufacturing the product right away. There's about 2,200 concrete vault pieces that need to be manufactured, and we need every bit
Just
of
for
time.
community playfields?
Yes.
It's a big project.
It's a big project, yes.
This slide is a little bit preliminary. Most of the numbers on here for the budget are still just estimates, but we wanted to show the board, at least at this point in time, our budget forecasting is looking very good. The project that has been bid and is about 45% complete is Phase 1A, which is all storm sewers in our right-of-way. And we're at budget and perhaps a little under budget, but there's still some work to do. And you can see that our construction bid for that was $1.9 million under our overall budget estimate. So that's a project, or at least so far, that's headed in the right direction. The rest of the numbers there are still conceptual. They're based on the $20.3 million for community playfield in 2020 includes optimization. That $20.3 million is a number that we showed you back in February when we talked about optimization. And the construction estimate currently is $22.1 million. The increase of $2 million can be somewhat explained by the bullet points at the bottom of the slide. These are some of the add-ons that we've been discussing with the Park District and the school district. So the largest being taking the existing surface detention at Community Playfield and building a separate vault for it. So that's about a $1.2 million increase to the project. The benefit to the Park District is taking that water underground gives them a much more usable, playable space.
And if I can just add, there are still going to be additional costs as part of the Park District IGA. We just don't know what those are yet, and we're waiting to hear from them. But they've been talking about restroom facilities at Community Playfield and possibly at Thornwood Park, so those would be additional costs not contemplated right now.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask one. And so when you're going out to bid on Phase 1, I know I've asked this before, so I'm just going to make sure that the optimization is going to be bid as a separate, so that we know the additional cost.
That's correct.
Okay. Yes.
The first couple bullet points we covered tonight, the adoption of the stormwater utility ordinance as well as working on the credit incentive manual. The school board had a meeting yesterday, and we hope that they'll vote on a memorandum. I'm sorry, I should take a step back. We need an intergovernmental agreement with School District 39 because the Community Playfield construction relies on using the High Crest parking lot during the summer recess to get trucks in and out for easy and direct access to build the vault. So the school board, our staff has been working with them for about a year, but their board is contemplating first a memorandum of understanding, which we hope they will adopt on December 16th, followed by an intergovernmental agreement, hopefully in January or February at the latest. The park board is also working on an intergovernmental agreement. Their legal team is taking the lead on it, and we don't quite know the timing of that, but they tell us that it's in the works, so hopefully in the next several weeks.
Do they have to make a decision on the incremental facilities at the parks prior to sort of finalizing the IGA? I mean, presumably that's an exhibit to the IGA, so that could be part of. I know there's been some discussion and some community dialogue regarding what's going to be what the position of the parks are going to be post the project, and as you can imagine, not everybody agrees on that, so that could be part of the issue here, presumably.
And President Belinsky, the IGA itself will at some point be before this board?
Yes.
We'll have an opportunity
definitely.
to review it at a sufficiently early stage?
So I had a cross paths today with the executive director of the Park District who offered up without even me asking that their attorney should have something to me by the end of next week as far as a draft IGA. I've worked with this attorney before for years, so and I know he's using a format that we've used in the past for West Park as far as the terms of the general legal terms. I think the specific terms that President Belinsky was referring to is still what's left, but there should be sufficient time if I get it by the end of next week for at least my review and then my report back to the board upon any other changes that I would recommend.
Yeah, and I think if it's feasible, it probably makes sense to have that sent to us when it's available, as opposed to waiting until putting it on an agenda.
Yeah, I would probably have some discussions with the attorney, and if I had some sticking points that I would like to go back to him.
Yeah,
But hopefully I would.
You could turn it
after
before
that
it
ugly
comes to us.
process of two attorneys fighting over a document. I would like to get it to you guys prior to board meeting, since we don't have one
just
for a while.
Speaking as a client anyway, I'd like that to be accompanied with some form of an executive summary to facilitate our review of it.
Absolutely.
Just because the neighbors have been asking as well, you talked about all three parks. I mean, obviously, by the time you get to Thornwood, we're pretty long, far down the road. Is the Park District going to request what they want at each of the parks, and that has to be agreed upon now, even if it's in the future?
My understanding is the IGA will include all three parks.
We're going to attempt to include all three parks in it. If for some reason we have to break up the agreements in the separate parts because they haven't reached a conclusion yet on either Hibbert or Thornwood, and we don't want to adversely impact working at Playfield, then we can separate them out. The main reason we'd like to keep them all together is to make sure that whatever the asks are in terms of new facilities and parks, that we know what the budget is for that before we're signing off on individual ones. But
Yeah, I mean, is it possible, let's say the park board decides that what they'd really like to do is defer the conversation. I mean, is it possible to still have the IGA
Sure.
and have like allowances or something put in there?
Exactly.
You know,
That's
and
how-
amend it later?
That's how we would do it, and that was one of the features in the West Park agreement was we can build in an allowance, for example, when they wanted the particular type and design of field that they had, but that was going to be a long process on their end. We simply built an allowance into it where they had a cost not to exceed number that the village would finance should they choose to proceed with that element of it. So we could build something into this that, should they make the decision they want to do it, here's the village would contribute
Right, X number of dollars.
X number of dollars, and then hire your own contractor and do it.
Yeah, 'cause
The only thing
some-
that really might affect us if we have the ground open, if they need us to stub in water, sewer lines, that type of thing, but that's not huge. I mean, that can be done even after the tank's constructed.
Yeah, that won't end. We certainly don't want that to hold up our process. so.
Right.
And I think it's beneficial not to negotiate this piecemeal.
Yeah, if we can, absolutely. No, agree. Other questions, Trustee Dodd?
So, in terms of next steps, I see this park board, when are we expecting that the park board would approve this intergovernmental agreement? And what's our date of when we need it to be approved? Like, we'll go out to bid on these projects without having that?
Our confidence is with the memorandum of understanding that they've already approved,
They have,
yes. And,
okay, on all 3 sites?
yes,
Okay.
yes. As far as timing, ideally January. We expect to award the construction contract at the February 28th board meeting.
We
Okay, so
do.
that's a lot of time then before,
Okay.
we should have the IGA should be wrapped up by
Ideally,
February
yes.
28th, shouldn't it?
I would hope so.
And then I'm sorry, for the school board, I think you said, but I just want to make sure I understand, our only use of their facilities is the parking lot, the High Crest parking lot?
There's actually a couple things going on. The intergovernmental agreement with the school district will request a temporary construction easement for access, and that's to basically use their parking lot for summer recess to get our trucks in and out.
The reason for that, though, is otherwise we're using streets. And so it makes more sense, less impact on the neighbors, if you use an empty school parking lot during the summer than having trucks roll down, village right away, village streets. So, sorry, I interrupted you.
That's okay. And there's also a permanent easement that the village will be requesting for a 36-inch new storm sewer that we're building on the north end of the High Crest parking lot, and that connects the neighbors, the Schiller, Washington neighbors, to provide flood relief to them as well.
And that easement is immediately adjacent to an existing water main easement, so from impact on the school district, there really isn't any impact from that.
No,
So,
I don't believe so.
So, go back, the 1.2 million for the surface detention, is that on park, or is that part of the school? Trying to figure out the
Good
government. Which
question.
government owns the
That's a good question.
detention?
but there's an interesting discussion here, because it's on Park District
It's on Park
property.
District property.
But there is discussion of whether the school district gets credit for the detention with the MWRD, so that if they do future expansions at High Crest, that the detention will be applicable to their property. So it's a harder question than you think. It's under the park. I mean, the answer you're really asking is, it's under the park. It's part of our vault.
How did that come to us? Who asked? Did the park say, so it was the park that said, when you're back there doing, can we
Yes.
do this to this part of the,
That's correct.
got it, okay.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's the
Easier
puddle.
answer. Yeah.
Surface detention is a puddle, okay? I mean, that's That's what it is. The engineers call
Fancier
it surface.
engineering term.
I know, but
Puddle is not,
that's what it is. It's the big puddle in the trees. So you put a drain and it drains into the hole in the ground instead. So, and it costs $1.2 million to do that. So
Big
Well, to
puddle.
reconstruct the lot.
it is a big puddle. Go ahead.
No, sorry. One of the last meetings, I don't know, several months ago, when we were talking after the trees and the community playfields, there was discussion about having community meetings about the intergovernmental agreement. Is that going to be on the Park District side? If people are asking, are there going to be, I mean, is the Park District holding any meetings as to what people want in the parks? Is the village involved at all in those?
There were a series of 6 meetings, maybe more, starting last April, both in the field as well as public hearings that the Park District held to determine what their constituents wanted in those parks. So I think that part is done. Now we're in the decision-making and the refinement of those details. I don't believe the Park District is holding separate meetings for that, other than what will be discussed as a part of their regular course of action at a public meeting. So they're all open to the public, as will our village board approval of the IGA. And-
We all have received emails from residents that are close to Thornwood Park requesting specifically that they have input in the terms of the IGA. And I think Mr. Frenzer's response was, thank you. This is a matter that you should raise with the Park District. It's their land. So I think in each case, we have responded that there is a place to address this. It's simply not at the village board.
Well, we won't make the decision to whether what facilities are located in Thornwood Park. It'll be part of the agreement that we end up ratifying,
Right.
and I'm sure people will address us on that. But you're right that ultimately we're not dictating whether there should or shouldn't be whatever facilities at whatever park.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, some of the emails are a little confusing in the sense that it's, we want public input onto the IGA. There is public input into the IGA to the extent that the public is still, and even up through last week, giving the Park District more input in terms of what they want in it. The actual document itself, of course, is not crowdsourced. That's prepared by the attorneys. So, but there's continuing public meetings at the Park District where this is being discussed. Every point of view is being heard on it. There's also some concern neighbors have about what, in terms of emergency generation on the site, whether that the village should be using a towed generator or whether we should have a fixed generator that's screened on the site because it'll require a pump. Even a tow generator with us so as to meet their needs and still ensure performance of the system when the residents need it most, because of course the time when the power is most likely to be out is the time when the facility is most likely to be needed. We'll work through all that. So there's ample opportunity for public input on it. The attorneys will actually work out the specific language in it, and then those documents
but
will
the
be
reality is
presented for public
Yeah,
review.
the policymakers, not the attorneys, will make the decisions
Right.
that the residents are most concerned about. I don't think anybody's looking to mark up the IGA, I think they want the substance, they want to have input on the substance. And as even the newer trustees have found, being on the board, it's highly unlikely that you're going to get 100% agreement in a community of 27,000 on any particular decision, in particular, something around the parks or the like. So you're certainly not going to be in a circumstance where you leave a meeting and everyone is happy. It just doesn't happen that way. So.
But I take it that when it comes to those improvements, we still have some room to negotiate in terms of how much we're willing to spend. We're not an open pocketbook for the Park District.
Of course. And what's interesting is the park, we're not getting, my understanding from when I last talked to the executive director at the Park District at League of Women Voters State of the Village, we're seeing just a fraction of the emails they're getting. They're actually getting an overwhelming number of emails that have an opinion that differ from the emails that we're getting. So,
So to follow up on Trustee Kennedy's question or point, so we're in the process right now of working through this intergovernmental agreement with the lawyers on the park board side, it sounds like. And so have we, is that deciding exactly what we'll do and the cost associated with that? And will that come in front of the board
Yeah.
before we?
yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We don't have their request yet. We don't know what they're asking for.
Oh,
in
I
each
thought
park,
you
so
said
we're
you were
waiting
already,
on
I
that.
misunderstood you.
No, what I stated was I will have their initial requests at the end of next week, is what I was told.
Okay.
Do you think that'll have the exhibits in it? It won't just be the form?
I'm hoping it's everything
Okay,
because
all
of
right.
how far we're gone, but I'm not in control of the document. The other two easements that I was in control of are done.
Yeah,
So-
and again, they,
Or
the
versions are
the
done.
policymakers have to decide what
Versions
the
are
ask is
done of
versus the
those, yeah.
lawyers. You know, it's not that it's sitting on some lawyer's desk in downtown Chicago.
Right.
It's the policymakers have to make their decisions too.
And so then we'll review those requests as a board at one of our board meetings before, is that the process, before?
Yeah, and hopefully Mr. Stein will be able to get that out to us. You know, there may be a turn or so, but hopefully we'll get that well before our next board meeting.
So the goal is obviously for staff to have their ideas and where the direction is both from each respective board, and then to present to you the document with the executive summary stating exactly what's in this document, what we're responsible for, what we're allowed to do, and then for your review and questions and changes and comments, you know, hopefully well in advance. As soon as I get it, it's going to be a priority for me, but I have to get it.
So, yeah, that's why governmental cooperation is so much fun and so easy to do, right? Because
As
you've
we
got
were
multiple
discussing
sets of
this
policies.
project and the total expense, we knew this negotiations, and we knew there was going to be an ask and certain expenses outside of just putting a
Yeah.
concrete tank and throwing dirt on top of it and moving on. We sort of knew
Yeah.
this, given
Yeah,
our
yeah.
West Park experience. So
Right.
Yes.
And West Park was roughly, what, $1 million?
Right.
Yeah, so I think people, that sort of anchors you. One
No,
part
I-
was $1 million.
Right. So this is sort of normal, and we're not hearing any.
But
Yeah.
it's
No, this
already in
is
the
normal.
budget, too,
Yeah,
correct?
it's already in the
I mean, it's
budget.
already been,
We have a contingency.
right, part of what we,
Yeah.
President Belinsky, may I follow up on something that Trustee Kennedy asked?
Of course.
So the nature of our review then, when these asks come to us, isn't with respect to whether we should have a freestanding bathrooms or AstroTurf or lights or whatever. It relates to the, as the village manager said, the functioning of the system and its effect on the budget for this
Yeah,
project
the
that
cost,
we've
right,
created.
exactly, the cost and the functioning, right. That's really what our mandate is here, and sort of our agreement with the Park District is that, thank you for letting us use your land. We'll leave it in at least a better shape, as good a shape as it is now. And by the way, there's some room for some improvements while we've got the ground dug up. I think that's been our sort of handshake agreement, and probably actually memorialized in the
MOU.
memorandum
Yep.
of understanding, so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think you've got it nailed exactly, Trustee Barrow. All right, any further discussion here? Okay, so what's in front of us tonight is approval of the contract. But before that, I'll open the floor to public comment. Would anyone like to address the board on this matter? Okay, then we'll move on. I'll now ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion to approve the contract.
Trustee Sullivan.
Aye.
Trustee Kennedy.
Aye.
Trustee Dodd.
Aye.
Trustee Kurzman.
Aye.
Trustee Barrow.
Aye.
Trustee Plunkett.
aye.
President Belinsky.
Aye. Okay, so the motion carries, the contract is approved. I think that's it for municipal services.
All other items were handled on consent.
And this is a good conversation, folks. We're going to be constantly talking about this as contracts come to us, agreements come to us, and the like. And it's good and it's fine to sort of back up a little bit and remind us all of some of the specifics. So,
Trustee Belinsky, might I just add one thing? I really just thank you all, and thank you, Ms. Berger, for bringing this forward. I did feel that a contract of this magnitude deserved an airing among us and for everyone in the village that cared to be involved. And I think it's very useful for the discussion that it produces. Thank you.
You're welcome, and as Trustee Dodd pointed out last meeting or the meeting before, on some of these stormwater things, we'll try and keep them off of consent unless they're really routine, so that we can have continued conversation on stormwater project as we're sort of inching forward here, so.
Yeah, I wanted to just add one thing. First of all, Bridget, thank you, and I thought the next steps was just really helpful. So one thing that would be helpful for the staff to consider that might be helpful for the board, would be helpful for me, is just kind of just a timeline over the next 6 months of, you know, when are some of the key decision points going to be for the board, at what meetings, when are things going to be going to the park board, when are things, I don't know, maybe I'm just, there's a lot of moving targets here, and it just might be helpful
Yeah,
for us
that's
to
a good
just have a sense
suggestion.
of that.
And we may not have dates
and-
on everything, but sort of
It can be
like
like
the flow
first,
chart of
right,
what has
yes.
to happen.
I mean, I thought your
Yeah.
next step slide was really helpful, and I think that's what got me asking some of those questions. So if that could be prepared or reviewed with us, that would be helpful.
The request has been made of the staff. Okay. Public Safety Committee, Trustee Kurzman, back to the agenda.
All items covered on consent.
Judiciary Committee, Trustee Plunkett.
All items covered on consent.
There are no reports from our special committees. Item 7 is new business. There's no additional new business to discuss. Item 8 is adjournment, so I will ask for a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body pursuant to Section 2, sub C, sub 1 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll on the motion.
Trustee Sullivan.
Aye.
Trustee Kennedy.
Aye.
Trustee Dodd.
Aye.
Trustee Kurzman.
Aye.
Trustee